Hello, this is Theisan from MMA Collector. Every week I will bring in a new piece of memorabilia from my personal collection and even bring in a few collector friends with some of theirs. Our goal is to raise awareness of MMA memorabilia collecting and discuss the historical people and fights that made this sport what it is today. Join me now while we take a stroll down memorabilia lane. Today we are showing Tank Abbott's fight-worn shoes from the first Ultimate in 1995. Tank Abbott will go down in history as the UFC's first bad boy.
At MMA Collector, we're to kind of stick with the vintage UFC stuff. Last week we looked at something from Ultimate 95, and I promised everybody we would have a fight-worn item from the same event. So what we have here are Tank Abbott shoes that he wore in Ultimate 95. Tank had a couple fights in Ultimate 95.
Tank dominated in and out of the ring. He was a star on the mic, and if you think Tank's personality wasn't subtle and layered, think again. He entered the Ultimate with these bright yellow shoes with a wary smile and intent to kill. The shoes are really Tank's most memorable piece of ring attire in my book.
But yeah, you do get that visual picture of Tank in the yellow shoes, and that Ultimate 95 was, the UFC throwing everything at their, Ultimate, the biggest show they've done to date. So
Yeah.
that's cool.
It was.
How'd you get these? Where'd these come from?
I got these from a good friend of mine, Brian Grooms, but his story is a little more interesting. He was able to get these from a guy by the name of Dan, the Wolfman Theodore, who was training with Tank in a later event that Tank was training for, and he didn't have wrestling shoes, and Tank went and grabbed him these, let him have them, and it just so happened to be the ones that he wore in Ultimate 95. So Brian bought them from Dan, I bought them from Brian, and here they are today.
Very, very
wore
interesting.
These against Steve Jenham, who was the Ultimate. He won UFC 3. And he also wore these that night on the semifinal, lost to Dan Severn.
So at the moment when he said he felt like he was being raped by Freddie Mercury in the post-fight interviews, he was wearing these.
He was still wearing them.
That's the neighborhood we're talking about. This is a very long time ago.
Don't get me wrong. Telia Tuli was a big, tough Hawaiian. Gerard Gordeau was intimidating as anyone. Harold Howard had big strikes, and Hoy seemed downright sinister, but they were all silent assassins. When Tank sent the certificate of authenticity, he added a note joking about the size of the shoes. Tank is an all-time historic fighter and an intricate part of the early UFC lore. Nice shoes, David.
I sent pictures of them, the history of them, of where I got them from, where they came from, and I made a really nice certificate of authenticity. And when he sent it back, he also had a little note to make sure they were a size 5, to be sure that they were the right ones. Well, I don't think they're a size 5, but I know they're the right ones, and he signed it. But he's a interesting guy and pretty humorous as well.
So again, Tank is one of those people from the early days, that was an icon. His memorabilia, I'm sure he's had a million people reaching out to him and looking for him and stuff.
A good friend of mine, for many years was interested. Tank, if I'm not mistaken, he either had the very first pair of gloves worn in the UFC or he was the second. I want to say he actually had the first pair. Well, he really didn't want to get rid of them, but a friend of mine was pretty good friends with Tank, and they got together quite often. They didn't live close by, but they'd vacation with each other, and Tank one time just ended up sending him those gloves. So he's very fortunate to have what I believe is the earliest pair of fight-worn gloves to ever be worn in the UFC.
Courtesy of Tank Abbott.
Courtesy of Tank.
And, Tank didn't ask him for any money for that. So, obviously, at some point, when you could break through the big guy got, a soul in there somewhere.
Oh, he does, for sure.
So definitely a rare piece of material here, going back to Ultimate. We've been on early UFC kick in these last couple of programs. Next,
I was gonna bring out something from Pride next week from Pride Bushido 3.
All right.
I think will be a pretty interesting item.
There we go. Thank you very much, Ed. There's no doubt that Tank Abbott is a pioneer of the sport, but he's not in the UFC's Hall of Fame. Should that be corrected? A superficial look would tell you that Tank Abbott is not Hall of Fame eligible, with the main thing disqualifying him being his losing record. But Tank was inactive after the Pedro Rizzo fight for almost 5 years before returning to the UFC, and if you consider his career before 1998, he had a serviceable 8-7 record, and he fought the best fighters the UFC had to offer. The bottom line is Tank Abbott was never able to break through to win a UFC tournament, but besides Royce Gracie and maybe Ken Shamrock, there's no other name from the early days that resonates like Tank Abbott today. And as a pioneer of the sport and the sport's first bad boy, a Hall of Fame induction should be considered. If you enjoyed our video, take a moment to like and share, and subscribe to the MMA Collector on YouTube and join our collector community.